Good evening, everyone. Before we start our regular meeting, I would like to reconvene the special meeting of the Glendale City Council, which was in recess to consider a closed session item. And Mr. City Attorney, is there anything to report out?
No, Mr. Mayor, there's not.
Okay. Would someone move to adjourn the special meeting?
Moved. Second.
Okay, special meeting is adjourned, and I welcome everyone to the November 3rd, 2015 meeting of the Glendale City Council. We're starting slightly late because we ran long this afternoon and in closed session, and we grabbed a small bite to eat. So that's being debated on the dais as whether it was small or not. And we are starting now at 6:20. Mr. City Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Council members Devine. Here. Friedman.
Here.
Garpetian.
Here.
Sinanian.
Here.
Mayor Najarian.
Here. Councilmember Devine, would you lead us in the flag salute?
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for this evening's invocation, which will be delivered by Pastor Todd Leonard of the Glendale City SDA Church.
Let us pray. Our God, in the words and spirit of the prophet Amos, we ask that tonight the justice will roll down like a mighty waterfall, that it will flow out like a mighty river. May we continue to shun evil and to seek to bring about what is good. Amen.
Amen.
May we have your report?
The agenda for the November 3rd, 2015 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, October 29, 2015 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. The next item?
Our presentation on appointments at 3A is agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, November 10, 2015.
Ms. Beers.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the November 10th, 2015 Housing Authority meeting as well as the City Council meeting have been canceled. Our next regularly scheduled meeting will be held on November 17th to commence at 3 p.m.
Thank you. And the next item, please.
Item 3B is military banner presentation by retired Glendale City of Glendale Fire Chief Don Biggs.
Chief Biggs.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, it is my honor once again to, as the chairman of the administrator of the military banner program, to present a retired military member to receive his banner. I'm going to talk a little bit about Mark McCarley, and I mean very little of what he's written down here, because he's written a lot. He is a rather unique in that he is a major general, retired from the United States Army after many years. He is also a very prominent lawyer around town. You want to sit down, huh? It's going to take a while. He is a graduate of the United States Army War College, the University of Massachusetts, where he has a master's, and at Cal State University Northridge with a bachelor's and associates from Glendale College. So starting all local and going up through the military chain for many years, he's accomplished a lot. He is a lawyer starting in 1976 with McCarley and Rosen, his company, or his firm. Some of the military things, Major General, a Deputy Chief of Staff of the United States Army Training and Doctrine Command, which handles Army recruiting, educating, and training soldiers for developing in the military. He was as a Major General, Deputy Commanding General for the operations including Iraqi Freedom, Operation New Dawn, and Enduring Freedom. 2009, he was a Brigadier General, Deputy to the 1st Theater Sustainment Command in Kuwait. Before that, the Brigadier General, the Sustainment Command at Fort Shafter, Hawaii. Tough duty, and I know that's one of the areas he might even think about retiring. Also, another run in Kuwait. As a colonel, and Lieutenant Colonel, Chief of Staff for Logistics for the West Coast, deploying troops to Afghanistan and Iraq. He's a former Commissioner of Veterans Affairs in Los Angeles, Director of American Red Cross, a Reserve Deputy Sheriff, amongst all that. And one of the things that's closest, that's kind of him in a very short form, and some of this you may have heard because he was our speaker at Memorial Day last year, or this year. And one of the things that's near and dear to my heart that he's done is the development, in his spare time, because he is a full-time lawyer, but development of a mentoring program at Glendale College. We're working with the Glendale College Veterans Clubs to bring professionals in this community together with the students who are veterans at Glendale College to try to give them kind of some insight. And I know there's some realtors involved. A lot of members of the Rotary Club and the Kiwanis Club have been recruited by Mark to come up there and put their professional expertise, or make their professional expertise available to those students at Glendale College. And that one is really near and dear to all of us. So the short version, I want to present retired Major General Mark McCarley, Glendale, longtime Glendale resident and representative of this city to much of the world, for his banner.
I'm going to come down and help you, Chief.
Thank you.
General, congratulations for all your service. And we don't have a honorable service medal in the city of Glendale, but we do have our lapel pin, which I hope you will wear proudly next to your general's bar. I'm sure it'll be a great conversation start.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.
First rate. Thanks. Thank you to Don Biggs, a friend for a long, long time, and certainly to each one of you as leaders of this wonderful city that was my birthplace and spent most of my life, except when I was at school or in the Army, here, sometimes in Burbank, but always came back to Glendale. And to those organizations that have been so supportive of veterans. I'm here, certainly I'm proud and delighted to receive my banner, but really I come before you in a representative capacity, meaning I'm here to represent all those men and women who have raised their hand and committed themselves to selfless service in our armed forces. And for that, we are immensely grateful to this city, to the Chamber of Commerce that initiated the program, to the city who has furthered the program through the Veterans Coalition. And again, all that the city and fine members of this community and community organizations have done for veterans. It's a far cry from what some of the leaders here, members including Don, one or two others that I see behind me, who served courageously in Vietnam and suffered horribly, not only in that conflict, but when they came home. And so this is a vast improvement. I will say, and I don't want to take up too much more time, that this is a theme that several of us have advanced, is that while this conflict is perhaps coming to an end, and I say perhaps with a big question mark, as you can well see, and because there is tyranny and despotism and deprivation and all sorts of terrible things happening around the world, this is not the end of the commitment of my children, your children, to service in the armed forces or service in our law enforcement communities or in the fire department or even as members of our school system. There's so many teachers who have exhibited the commitment to selfless service, not only in support of their classrooms, but those teachers in the last couple of years who have actually put themselves in front of a bullet to save their charges, their children, from death by those who are absolutely despicable But we will commit our young people once again and some of our older people to conflicts. And so we just ask, once again, collectively, not just I, Mark McCarley, but for all those who have served in law enforcement, in the fire department, in our armed services, please do not forget. This will happen again and again and again. And so as Don indicated, and as I conclude, we have put together a program. I give great credit to Dave Vire, Dr. Dave Vire up at Glendale College. It is my alma mater. I came back, he and I got together, and we collectively, he's a great, not only a superb superintendent, but also he is a Vietnam veteran. And we sat down and we said to ourselves, how can we best assist veterans in Glendale to transition successfully, to make meaningful commitments to their community? And as Don explained, Mr. Biggs explained, it's basically a mentoring where we have a big brother, so to speak, and a young veteran who has come back trying to find his or her way in the educational process and in our community. And I will say that we have one distinguished member of this august body who has already joined. He is, in fact, a member of the Glendale College Veterans Mentoring Platoon, so we do have enlistment papers, so if any of you want to join up, I'm right here with those papers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, as next week is Veterans Day, just to make a quick plug for a few programs going on around our area. Just each year I seem to do this just before Veterans Day, just to remind everybody in Glendale. The Burbank, well, we'll start with Forest Lawn. The Veterans Coalition and the Verdugo Job Center down on Central will have a booth over at the Forest Lawn Hollywood Hills program, which starts off as a program 11 o'clock on the 11th. A lot of people come. It's in LA, and so it's all LA politicians and such, but it's skydivers and music, and our Crescenta Valley ROTC, junior ROTC group does a lot of the color guard. They do the ceremony, and then after that they do a job fair inside the building, and we're going to help with that and try to get the word out that there's jobs available for veterans, that they know where to look. In addition to that program, there's a program at Burbank, Cambridge Park. There's a program at Two Strike Park in La Crescenta, which is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, heavily involving, again, the junior ROTC kids from CV. And that program leads into a chamber mixer, a Crescenta Valley chamber mixer at the American Legion on La Crescenta Avenue, where they're going to honor veterans that night. So that's kind of a day of activities. And as a final note, I always encourage people, thank a veteran, thank someone for what they did for their country. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chief. I've got to say, I almost choked when you said that Mr. Kasakian joined your group. I thought he enlisted. I'm thinking, oh. But thank you. It's a veterans mentorship program through the college. Very good.
And if I may, I just want to say to General McCarley, it's an honor to know you, and he's a Kiwanian. I just wanted to let you know that.
We're going to play that game, are we? Okay.
No.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
3C is a proclamation declaring the month of October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Okay. Who is here to receive the proclamation?
I don't think there's any.
No? Is there someone?
Anyone here?
I will.
Seroptimist?
It is a seroptimist.
Lisa, you want to?
I'll accept it. Can I accept it on behalf?
Yes, of
I don't
course.
think there's
Are you a
anyone.
Kiwanis?
Okay, I thought you were Kiwana.
I am, but I'm also a seroptimist, too.
Did you join Kiwanis?
Of course. I've been a member
It's
for a
not
while.
exclusive. Membership is not exclusive. I do have a proclamation, and let me read it into the record. Whereas October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and whereas in the United States, 1 out of 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer, and an estimated 211,240 new cases of female breast cancer were diagnosed in 2009, and that mammography is recognized as the most effective method of detecting breast changes that may be cancer long before physical symptoms can be seen or felt. And whereas seroptimists are in a position worldwide to educate everyone, especially women, that they have access to breast cancer prevention information and services. And whereas the Seroptimist campaign to promote breast cancer awareness is an ongoing Seroptimist effort to encourage awareness, advocacy, and action. And whereas Seroptimist is an international volunteer organization for business and professional women who work to improve the lives of women and girls in local communities and throughout the world, they have launched a region-wide campaign called Color Me Pink for breast cancer. Now therefore I, R. Najarian, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month, with special recognition to Seroptimists of the Camino Real region for their various contributions to the many communities for advocacy, action, and awareness.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much. As past president, I accept this on behalf of Seroptimists International of Glendale. Thank you.
Next item.
3D is a proclamation declaring the month of November as Domestic Violence Month.
I believe that's,
Is there anyone to step
Believe
forward?
that.
This is also a Seroptimist.
yes, yes.
Okay. I will read this into the record. Whereas November is End Domestic Violence Month, and whereas domestic violence, DV, is a serious and violent social problem that exists in all economic segments of society, in all cultures, and in all countries of the world, and knowing that every 9 seconds a woman is beaten in the United States, totaling more than 1.3 million each year. And whereas Seroptimists are in a position worldwide to educate everyone, especially women, that they have the right to feel safe and to live free from violence at home and in the workplace. And whereas the Seroptimist Workplace Campaign to End Domestic Violence is an ongoing Seroptimist effort to promote awareness, advocacy, and action. And whereas Seroptimist is an international volunteer organization for business and professional women who work to improve the lives of women and girls in local communities and throughout the world, they've launched a region-wide campaign called Purple for domestic violence. Now therefore I, R. Najarian, do hereby proclaim the month of November as End Domestic Violence, with special recognition to Seroptimists of the Camino Real region for their various contributions to the many communities for advocacy, action, and awareness.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Next item, please.
Next item on the agenda is the consent items, including minutes following a routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed.
Is there any request to pull an item, or is there a motion for the consent calendar?
Motion?
The item?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is city council and staff comments.
Ms. Devine?
Thank you. This past week, I attended a conference held by Senator Carol Liu on aging. It's estimated that by the year 2030, California will have 4 million more senior citizens. The conference addressed the difficult dynamics of change happening in the senior community and how municipalities can address and plan ways to ensure that seniors continue to receive services that they need. There were 2 other representatives from our senior services program at the conference, and I look forward to speaking with them and to staff about ways that Glendale can facilitate the many seniors that we have currently and that we will have in the future. Secondly, I want to mention that I attended the championship games of the One Glendale after-school youth program at Pacific Edison, and I have to tell you it was fantastic, and I want to congratulate those responsible, the Park and Open Space nonprofit. I want Dignity Health, which contributed, and of course our Parks Department, which did an absolutely amazing job. There were so many parents there and good stories to be told about all the kids that were involved in this program, amongst which was the fact that some of the boys that were involved in bullying at the schools have now changed their behavior because of this program, because there are certain expectations that are put forth. And also the story of a young girl who is pre-diabetic. And because of this after-school program, she's now losing weight and hopefully getting healthier. So it was a fantastic day. I look forward to seeing the basketball. That's the next program for after-school. We now have 4 schools involved in this program, but as I understand it, other principals are interested and they want to get involved. The kids want to get involved, so it's just amazing. And I just want to thank Parks and Open Space and Dignity Health and everyone that was associated with that. And I also want to let everyone in the community know about the Glendale Adventist Compassion in Action mission to Armenia. They sent 35 missionaries, as they called themselves. There were 15 physicians and then nurses and other volunteers, paid for their own ways, by the way. They did not take any funds from the foundation or from any other charities or affiliations of the hospital. They paid their own ways. Some of them took vacation time to go. They performed 35 surgeries. They actually saved 2 lives while they were there. One was a woman who had a heart attack, and they saved her life. And another one was a woman who came in with heart failure, and she had no pulse, no blood, nothing, no life signs. And they treated her, and she is alive and healthy today because of this this wonderful humanitarian effort. They also donated a completely equipped ambulance to the city, and the city is Nguyen Berrien. They donated an ambulance and also $150,000 worth of equipment that they left there. And they're going to be in contact with the hospital for the entire year via the internet, helping them with any of the cases that they come across that they need help with. And then they plan on going back every year for the next 3 or 4 years. So I just want to let everyone know of this wonderful humanitarian effort by Glendale Adventist and their staff. I just can't say enough about how wonderful it is that we have a group of medical practitioners that are willing to give their time and their money and their expertise to another country. And I thank them, and I think we all thank them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Carpeccia?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I've gone to so many events this week, and only Sunday was, surprisingly, I had only one event to go to, and it was a fun event, Fritz Coleman's a comedy night. It was a good event, but I don't have much to report because if I want to start, it will be all night, so in the interest of time, stop right here.
Thank you, Mr. Carpeccia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just make an announcement. I'll remind all the listeners and the guests in the chamber today that on Saturday, November 7th, from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. At the Glendale Civic Auditorium, which is located 1401 North Verdugo, the 6th Annual Glendale Health Festival will take place. At the last council meeting, we had Dr. Manuel Momjan make a presentation about the wide array of medical services that will be provided free of charge. Oh, thank you. Thanks for putting that up. Free of charge And we encourage everyone to come and use this wonderful opportunity. I'll assure you, tremendous amount of effort has been put in to organize this event, and there are some very generous doctors and organizations that will be volunteering their services and their equipment. And it'd be a shame if someone needed medical attention or needed some type of medical service and did not use this opportunity. So please be there. And in terms of events, last Sunday I have attended the third gala for Lark Musical Society, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, musical school, a comprehensive music school in the city of Glendale. And as usual, it was a wonderful event attended by a lot of people. And I look forward to school's future activities. Now, two of my kids are also students there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I have a request, and that is that we adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of Paul Roberts, who recently passed away. Paul Roberts was born December in 1955 to Frank and Eleanor Roberts. He grew up in La Crescenta and attended all of the local schools in the area. Paul graduated from Crescenta Valley High School in the early 70s and went on to attend Glendale Community College. Paul purchased the family-owned Landry's Sporting Goods store, located right in Montrose, from his brother in the early 1980s. He was an avid sportsman who loved to hunt and play golf with his son, Jeffrey. In addition to supporting the town of Montrose and the Crescenta Valley sports teams, Paul supported local teens by giving them jobs at his store and by acting as their mentor. He worked with the Crescenta Valley Little League as well as many other sports teams in the area. He also was a board member of the Montrose Shopping Park Association and on the Transportation and Parking Commission for the city of Glendale. And that's how I best became friends with Paul. Paul left his own mark on the city and the city that his dad helped build, and that was Montrose. Mr. Roberts is survived by his son, Jeffrey Roberts, and his brothers, Jim and Gary Roberts. Paul passed away on October 24th this year and was 59 years old. We'll adjourn in his memory. Next item, please.
Next item is the community event announcement portion. This is for 3-minute announcements about events taking place around town.
Okay, I have a card from Beth Liviton and Becky York.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Beth Leviton.
And I'm Becky York.
We're proud members of the Glendale Rose Float Association. We're a nonprofit formed this year to support the city of Glendale and the Glendale community in funding, designing, and coordinating volunteers for Glendale's Rose Float entries.
This year's float is titled the Find Your Adventure. That's the Tournament Roses theme, and Glendale is very proud to have a float in this year's or next year's parade. And our float is titled Getting There is Half the Fun. And we're here to grab enthusiasm and have all the community support for the funds that we need to raise to help keep us going in the Tournament of Roses parade.
As you know, there are a lot of ways to support the float, and what we have coming up a week from Sunday, November 15th, is our gala fundraiser. Everything is coming up roses at the historic Ard Even Estate. It is from 2 to 4 p.m. There will be a silent auction, there will be special musical presentations, and some speeches, and just a way for everybody in Glendale to get together and to hear about the float and to support the float.
Also wanted to point out on the float, we have representatives of our designs in the community for Getting There is Half the Fun. We have the train station represented, we have the airline represented from the original oh, what do you call it? It's like the plane that Amelia Earhart flew out of the airway station. And so all the different types of transportation that came from Glendale. So we wanted to get our design out there and show how fun it's going to be. And we're really excited that the theme really flows with the tournament theme.
Yeah, I think that the Getting There is Half the Fun shows that Glendale's on the move, and it shows how much Glendale's growing, how dynamic it is, and things like the Brand Boulevard of cars, the bicycles that are over on the Riverway, the Peacock. It's just has so much action and movement in it, and we're so proud to be involved. Also, there are, we just want to briefly mention the many ways that the community can support the float. We have membership at a variety of levels. There's sponsorship of a rider on the float, and we also want to mention today about volunteers to decorate the float. And all of this can be found by going to our website, GlendaleRosefloat.com. But we're very excited, first and foremost, about our event a week from Sunday. We're looking, the 15th, we're looking forward to seeing everybody. And
more information on our website,
yeah,
as
we'll,
mentioned.
exactly. And I don't know if I can hold this up this way, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Lisa Bubari.
Good afternoon, Mayor Najarian and City Council members and community. Lisa Bubari, the founder of Heal Within. I'm honored to be here because today it will be, my announcement is that for the 5th year, I am putting an event together, a seminar for the Great American Smokeout. This will be our 5th annual that I'm presenting for our community. Anyone who's interested in becoming a non-smoker to attend. Usually every year I used to do it at the Hilton. But this year our sponsor, which is Glendale Adventist, has asked me to do it at their site. So I will be doing the presentation at Glendale Adventist at the main auditorium. And we ask anyone who's interested, not only for stop smoking, but breaking any habits. If they're interested in learning how to break habits, especially smoking, they would like to attend. The Great American Smokeout is a national day for anyone who's interested in quitting, which I usually say it's, as human beings, as an adults, we do not like to be a quitter. So it's time for us to stop. When we do a stop, we make a choice. So on that day, we teach language. I help them understand the conscious and our subconscious, how to break habits, and to become a non-smoker. And there will be a guided visualization as well. It is open for anyone because the cost is free. I welcome anyone to attend. Again, it will be on November 9th. The Great American Smokeout is always the 3rd Thursday of November, but due to scheduling, we are doing it approximately a week earlier. It will be Monday, November 9th, between 6 to 8 p.m. at the auditorium in Glendale Adventist. So anyone who's a physician, if they have patients who are a smoker, who want to stop smoking, veterans, cancer patients who are in need of stopping, I welcome anyone to come and interested to learn about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
RSVP would be at info@healwithin, or they may call us at 818-551-1501. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards, so I will close this section of oral communications and ask that we move on to the next item.
Mr. Mayor, the next item is item number 8, action items. 8A is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding authorization to issue a purchase order for the prefabricated panels of composite materials required to refurbish deteriorated electrical vaults. 8A1 is a resolution dispensing with competitive bidding and authorizing the purchasing manager to execute a 3-year purchase order with Armorcast Products, Inc. for a not-to-exceed amount of $900,000 with an option to extend the purchase order to 3 additional one-year terms of $300,000 per year for a grand total not-to-exceed amount of $1,800,000.
Mr. Ochoa?
Yes, sir. And we can have Mr. Abue come up if you have any specific questions about the application of this particular technology. But effectively, a couple of years ago, as we recapitalized GWP Electric in terms of doing more of the capital replacement and repair, one of those areas of emphasis was our underground vaults. Last year, you allowed us on a pilot basis to use this composite material that we apply to the rehabilitation of underground vaults that effectively allows us to keep from having to dig up an enlarged area. So the vaults act basically, or the materials act to help us shore up the hole that is the vault. It actually has allowed us, we've been able to demonstrate to cut time and save money. The issue before you, however, is one that focuses on a dispense with competitive bid, because this particular application of this technology is patent pending sole source. There's no one else that can do it, literally, at this point in time. Now, that could change in the future, so what we're asking tonight is that you approve effectively a 2-year agreement not to exceed $900,000 that would allow us to move ahead with the scheduled replacement and rehabilitation of vaults, and then staff can report back to you over the ensuing 3 years if indeed we are able to find another vendor who can provide the same material. We can not exercise the options that are featured in this contract and bid out a contract at that point in time. But at this point, we would have the initial 2-year term not to exceed $900,000 plus 3 years at $300,000 each. But if you have questions about the actual work and how our guys use it, certainly Mr. Abue can answer those. Initial 2-year for the coming year and the year after that, and then there's 3 one-year terms afterwards, maximum $300,000 each.
Are there any questions?
Why is it a 3-year purchase order followed by 3 one-year additional, 3 one-year terms? Am I reading this?
Yeah. Councilman Sinanian, members of the council, we do have a vault replacement program that we're trying to schedule along with the different projects that we have. By asking in advance to do this, we can program them into our schedule, identify the resources that we need, and prioritize the vaults that we're working on. And the one vault, it looks like a lot, but really what we're addressing this in the next 5-6 years, we're probably going to be just handling about 6 or 7 vaults with this price.
So I think to your specific point, we have the current year, we have the coming fiscal year, and we have fiscal year 17-18. That's the 3 years that you see. We're already in that first year, okay. And so it does cover the 3 fiscal year. I mean, I think that's what the
yes.
question was. Yes. So it's the pilot that we have has run out because we've done the pilot work. So we're looking to move through the coming 2 fiscal years on top of the one that we're already in. And then the single-year options for each year thereafter, pending if somebody else enters the marketplace. But at this point, it is a patented technology.
Questions?
Okay, is there a motion for 8A1?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Garpetian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Next item.
8B is Director of Public Works regarding Brand Boulevard and Gardena Avenue and adjacent streets, sewer main, and street improvement project. B1 is motion awarding a construction contract to Pulp Inc., DBA Excel Paving Company for the improvement for the Brand Boulevard and Gardena Avenue and adjacent streets, sewer main, and street improvement project in the amount of $2,163,181.45, authorizing the city manager to execute the contract, approving a 15% reserve for contingencies in the amount of $324,477.22 and rejecting all other bids.
Mr. Ochoa.
As part of the steady drumbeat of infrastructure replacement that the council has emphasized as part of the current fiscal year budget, we have one more competitively bid competitively bid project before you. The plans and specs had been adopted previously. The bids went out. We got them back. A good grouping from 2.16 to 2.79. The lowest responsible is Excel Paving Company, who we've used before. I believe we do have a map that we can show, or a presentation. That's right, yes. Rubik's very proud of his street and sewer work. If you'll indulge us, I think folks, we like to see it, but we're kind of nerdy in that way, I suppose. It's good to invest in the infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ochoa.
Is there anything left to say there, Rubik? I'm just kidding. Sorry, man.
Extraordinarily short, as Mr. Ochoa would like to say. Presentation. Happy to report that the item before you is recommendation to award the construction contract for Brand Boulevard, Gardena Avenue, and adjacent streets, sewer and street improvements project.
Not advancing.
So the tentative construction start date is late January, early February of 2016, and approximate project duration is 6 months. Of course, barring adverse weather conditions, if and when El Nino arrives, we'll have to adjust the schedule. As Mr. Ochoa mentioned, the lowest responsible bidder is Excel Paving Company, who have done several major projects for us, the latest being the award-winning Glendale Avenue street improvement and sewer improvement projects. The bid amount, again, is $2,163,181 and some change. They were the lowest bidder amongst 4 other bidders, and this represents an 11% below the engineer's estimate of $2,440,000. As you see on this location map, the streets that will be impacted by this project are Gardena, Vassar, a portion of South Brand Boulevard, and San Fernando Road, west of Brand to Miraloma Avenue. The scope of work includes 4 major components, first being concrete improvements, which entails selective removal and replacement of uplifted and damaged sidewalks, curb ramps, driveway aprons, curbs and gutters, and all of this will be done in compliance with the latest ADA standards and guidelines. And you see a before and after picture of most recent project we have completed. Another major component is sewer main improvements. The plan here is to remove existing aged and under capacity sewer pipes and replace them with new larger pipes at the same locations, as well as installation of some new sewer pipes where there were none before. This work will be performed by open trench construction method and inevitably will have some temporary traffic impacts during construction and installation of the pipes.
Ask a quick question.
Yes, sure.
When you replace those pipes, or while you're replacing, what happens to the sewer?
The sewage. Excellent question.
Sewage.
If I may, yes. Council Member Garpetian, we install a bypass line during the removal of the existing, so we have a temporary bypass line to take care of the sewage while we install a new one.
For sure.
I'm positive.
Okay. Thank you.
But thanks for the reminder. Another major component are street pavement rehabilitation. The first step would be the removal of the existing deteriorated asphalt pavement. And this is done by grinding that top layer, and all the grindings will be hauled away. This will be done 1 full lane at a time, so traffic will be allowed to drive on the other lanes. And folks can drive on the existing base pavement immediately after the grinding's done. The following step will be the placement of rubberized pavement overlay. This will be 1.5 inches of rubberized asphalt over the existing base pavement, and then it'll be compacted. The new pavement will be compacted, and we will be using what's referred to in the industry as ARHM, asphalt rubberized hot mix, which contains used rubber tire segments. As soon as that's done, this will begin a new service life for the pavement. With rubberized asphalt, they typically last anywhere from 20 to 25 years. This will provide for a quieter and smoother ride and better surface traction and friction with the tires.
Is this something new that we're using, or have we used this before? Do we use this on Glendale?
No, Councilmember Devine, we've been using this material at least over the last 15 years that I've been here. It's nothing new.
Okay, nothing new. Okay.
And last but not least, we'll also make some traffic signal and striping modification, which will entail a relocation of the existing signals and upgrade of the vehicle and pedestrian indications at the intersection of San Fernando Road and Brand Boulevard. We'll also install new reflective pavement markers, lane lines, and curb markings, as well as new fluorescent and high-intensity signage for improved visibility, and a new bike lane on Brand Boulevard between San Fernando Road and the City of Los Angeles city limit to connect it to the existing bike lanes in Los Angeles for better connectivity. For this project, we will implement our standard public notification process. We have already held a community meeting with the affected residents and the businesses. About a month before we start the project, I will send a letter to all the businesses and residents. The contractor will also provide notification letters, typically 1 to 2 weeks prior to any phase of the project. We will, of course, install project signs as well as changeable message boards in advance of the project. Before the commencement of the grinding and the paving phases, the contractor will also provide 3-day door hangers. And when it comes to driveway closures, we'll make direct contact with the residents or the businesses impacted by that work. Folks can follow us on our website, on the Public Works website, for updates and details, as well as social media on Facebook and Twitter. If anyone has any questions, I encourage them to call Public Works Engineering at 818-548-3945 or visit our website at glendaleca.org/publicworks. And if I can make a plug for our Facebook, it's MyGlendalePW and hashtag MyGlendalePW on Twitter. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question.
Mr. Sutton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Golanian, I know that when the bids come in significantly below our engineer's estimate, red flags go off, but I think you said that this entity we've had plenty of experience with and their previous work was award-winning. Is that correct? So we're not worried about...
Councilmember Sinanian, yes.
We're not worried about that $250,000 below market. I mean, we're happy about it.
Right, and that represents 11%,
Right.
which is normal would like it to be no more than 12-13% below the engineer's estimate.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Ms. Friedman?
So speaking of El Nino, which you mentioned, why are we not incorporating any water retention, water permeable materials in this project?
Councilmember Friedman, the primary objective and scope of work of this project is sewer installation and construction.
I mean for the road paving.
Right,
part.
so the road paving comes after the sewer is installed. It's essentially the trenches get repaved and whatever's outside, so we have a continuous uniform gutter-to-gutter pavement. Opportunities in this area have been limited for that kind of pavement. We are experimenting at other areas where the grade of the street allows for retention, where we, as you recall, we can install bioswales in lieu of storm drain catch basins that convey it into storm drain systems. But this area is extremely flat, and it doesn't provide for enough grade that we can effectively collect sufficient amount of water.
What about permeable paving? So I know we're using it, as you mentioned, in some places. If it's flat, wouldn't that be a perfect opportunity for permeable paving?
Yes, and we have experimented with permeable paving. The industry prefers it to be on roadways and streets that don't carry heavy traffic or trucks.
And there's no, none of these streets, I saw your map, but
Right.
I'm not sure exactly which streets there are. Are any of these streets ones that are low enough trafficked to be considered for that?
We will take a second look, but in our initial planning, it didn't meet the warrants that we usually typically look for to make it suitable for a permeable pavement.
So my point is that this is something that we need to start thinking about for every single project that we do. So I know that we're doing a couple of demonstration streets, but the technology is such that this is being used now.
Right.
And this is very serious in Southern California, and we can't just say, well, every now and then maybe we'll do a gesture to retaining water on site or getting water to percolate back into the aquifer. It needs to be something that's just part of our public works program. So
Understood.
I just hope that you do take a second look, and it may not be appropriate, I have no idea. I just want to be assured that every time you do a public works project of any scope, just the way you do now with complete streets
Right.
for traffic, that you do the same thing with water retention, particularly when it comes to water that you're otherwise putting into storm drains that go out to the ocean. While underneath us, we have an aquifer that's drying up. We need to get water into the ground. So I hope that that's something that we're taking seriously and that we're looking at with every single project that Public Works does.
I reassure you, Councilmember Friedman, that we consider all of that, and especially on locations that will benefit from it. And as a new example that we have recently completed was the parking lot, Lot 10, between Harvard and Colorado. The parking stalls are all done with pavers that are permeable.
Good.
So anytime we have an opportunity and it's cost-effective, we take that into consideration and implement.
Well, let's think about the bioswales too, in places that are flat or that warrant it.
Understood.
Mr. Garpetian.
Yes, can you tell me how long, what's the length of the piping that we're replacing the sewer lines and the roadways? Is it a mile, half a mile, 2 miles?
Mr. Garpetian, it's less than that. I don't have that detail in front of me.
I went through it, I couldn't find it in the report either.
Right,
So.
right. It's probably around 2,500 to 2,800 feet.
2,500 to 2,800 feet. So less than half a mile.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one more question. What's the breakdown of the funds that are going to be used for the sewage pipe replacement versus the repaving of the street?
Councilmember Sinanian, we use gas tax money for paving of the streets and our own sewer funds for the installation of the sewer pipes.
Okay, but, I mean, the contract is an amount certain, right? 2.163.
Right. So $2 million in sewer improvements and the rest in street and concrete.
Okay, so that makes sense, because I think that really makes it genuinely a sewer replacement project as opposed to a paving project, which if it was the other way around, then the question would become, I mean, we're going to spend this much money on repaving a street, we might as well think about, the water retention, all those issues. But yeah, this looks like a sewer replacement program rather than a repaving project. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll move the item.
Second.
8B1, roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Next item.
C is City Manager regarding funding and participation in ongoing 710 freeway advocacy activities. C1 is a resolution of appropriating $6,000 from the general fund under undesignated fund balance to the Public Works Administration contractual services account. C2 is a resolution of appropriating $50,000 from the general fund undesignated fund balance to the Public Works Administration contractual services account for various consulting services for the 5 Cities Alliance and/or connected cities and communities.
Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. Just very briefly, as promised in reports past, we would come back to council periodically as you would appropriate dollars for the city now in the advocacy stage of the look at the 710 freeway project as it moves through the environmental review process. And allow you certainly to ask questions of staff, and in this case also of a consultant that is part of the team that is working with the Connected Cities Coalition to satisfy yourself that the funds that we are asking for, the funds that are being spent, add value ultimately to the city's long-term interests. To date, as we have migrated from the 5-city alliance that really focused primarily on the study of the proposed project through to the Connected Cities Coalition, which is much more focused on advocacy, we have spent about $86,000 or $80,000. We have an appropriation before you, a request of $6,000 for monies that have been spent at this point, and services that have been provided to get us to this point, and asking prospectively for another $50,000, particularly as SCAG is releasing its regional transit plan and the sustainable communities strategy that we will certainly want to comment on, both as a city and as a member of the Connected Cities Coalition. So with that, I can turn it over to council for any questions, or I believe Mr. King from High Point Strategies is here to give you a brief overview and entertain any questions the council might have regarding this effort.
Why don't we start with Mr. King, and then we'll take any questions for him or staff or city manager right afterwards.
Be able to control it.
Okay. Super. Good evening, Council. Thank you. I am Kobe King with High Point Strategies. I've been working with Beyond the 710, as you can see, as part of the 5-City Alliance and the Connected Cities and Communities Coalition. What I'm going to do today, just give you a little bit of overview about myself. I know quite a few of you, but some of you don't know me. Quick overview of the Beyond the 710 plan. The accomplishments since High Point Strategies was hired back in April, plans for the next 6 months, our outlook for success, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions, and frankly, I'm happy to answer any questions at any time, so feel free to interrupt me. In terms of me, my firm, the latest firm that I have was founded a couple of years ago, focusing, I wouldn't say primarily, but a lot on transportation, great deal of metro experience, working on a variety of things before Metro. I personally am not only a lawyer, please don't hold that against me, but have been working in public affairs and public relations for over 30 years. Clients both in the private and public sector. In fact, I would say about half of my work is done for public sector clients. A lot of experience in local politics, coalition building, media relations, and as a lot of you know, strong Valley connections, both in the San Fernando Valley and in the San Gabriel Valley. In terms of our plan, as many of you know, the Beyond the 710 plan was put together by, in consultation with the 5 cities, and which hired Nelson Nygaard, a nationally known transportation planning firm, to take a look at how we can deal with the real problems that the current configuration of the 710 are causing for cities all along the 710 corridor without having to do this tunnel, which, as we all know, would have absolutely horrible consequences for all the communities and really wouldn't solve any of the problems that supposedly it's being advocated for. So part of our plan, or part of the Beyond the 710 plan, is to acknowledge those problems and figure out what to do about them. Instead, as I said, promote an alternative that avoids this $6 to $12 billion boondoggle. And then on the north stub, which is closest obviously to the city of Glendale, fill in the stub area would promote a great deal of economic development, but would not overtax the 210 freeway. And for the south stub, would replace the stub that comes from the south, crosses the 10, It goes for about a mile before it dumps onto Valley Boulevard. Take all that out, replace the stub with a local highway that would much better redistribute the traffic in the area. One of the interesting things about the EIR that many of you have probably heard is that about 85% of the traffic that comes off of the South Stub and dumps into Alhambra and El Sereno, and eventually much of it making its way up into South Pasadena and even La Cañada and Glendale and other places, is local traffic. It's not traffic that's trying to get maybe up to the northern San Fernando Valley or Santa Clarita or the Antelope Valley. It is truly local traffic. And so since the proposed tunnel would not have any exits, it really wouldn't serve most of those people who are actually dumping off of the 710. So the idea that Nelson Nygaard came up with is to replace the stub with a local 4-lane highway. It would also, in addition to solving the traffic issues by redistributing the 35,000 or so daily cars, would also solve Alhambra's traffic issue, would redistribute traffic to local destinations, including Cal State LA, and the Beyond the 710, finally, in addition to the north and south solutions, would also promote active transportation and transit solutions. So, sometimes this plan has been criticized as trying to replace freeways with transit, and that's just not true. It's a mischaracterization. It really is a complete street solution along with active transportation and transit. Now, all of this was done before I was hired, and I recap it just to make sure we all remember what the Beyond the 710 plan did. But essentially what we had when I was hired back in April is we had a great plan, but nobody knew about it. There was no website. There was very little publicity that had been done about it. The Metro board did not, obviously with the exception of Mayor Najarian, didn't really know a whole lot about it. And so I was hired to actually get the word out about it. Since I was hired in April, we've actually made a great deal of progress. In May of this year, as you're aware, there was a press conference including participation by Congressman Schiff, representatives of all the city's major anti-710 organizations. It was, I got up there, but yes, the congressman went out and actually endorsed the plan, appeared at the press conference. We had great coverage by local media. Those of you who were there or heard about it. Basically, an entire panoply of cameras, radio, TV, LA Times, San Gabriel Valley Tribune, Variety, KNX. We had just fantastic coverage of it. It was a great launch. A couple of days later, the San Gabriel Valley Tribune actually editorialized not just against the tunnel, but in favor of Beyond the 710 as a common sense solution that could really solve everybody's issues and frankly free up a hell of a lot of money for some projects that would be better, not just for Glendale, but for the communities throughout the San Gabriel and San Fernando valleys. We've continued opportunistic media coverage. One of the things that happened most recently, we've done press releases on comment letters. The comment letters that came out when for the deadline on the 710 draft environmental impact report, when the San Gabriel Valley COG took an action to take the tunnel out of its priority list that it was sending over to Metro for inclusion in a possible potential sales tax measure. We did a press release about that and really garnered a great deal of positive coverage for that as well. There was an article in the San Gabriel Valley Tribune as well on health concerns, and we had some coverage in the planning report. We've also had appearances on local cable. Bottom line, and in addition to that, we've also had numerous stakeholder and elected official meetings to both explain the Beyond the 710 proposal, why it's a good alternative to the tunnel, all the benefits of not doing the tunnel, all the bad things about the tunnel. And the bottom line is that we really have seized the messaging away from the pro-710 people. We're dominating the coverage. We're dominating the outreach to the stakeholders and to the decision makers who are going to be ultimately making this decision. And I would say that not just the anti-tunnel forces, but the pro-alternative forces have really seized the agenda and are dominating the discussion right now. For the next 6 months, we plan on continuing our coalition building. I want to firm up some natural allies. One of the things that often gets noted is that while the COG did vote in favor of supporting the tunnel alternative, the margin of cities has dropped quite substantially. So a lot of doubt has been sowed over the last couple of years about whether or not the tunnel is a good idea for a whole variety of communities. We want to reach out to some of these people and firm up our natural allies, reach out to fence sitters, and then in terms of stakeholders, we've been focusing on those who can actually influence the final decision makers, including primarily Metro Board and senior staff, the focus on the potential ballot measure, making sure as much as is possible that there is no funding for the tunnel in what goes before the voters next year. As well, we're focused on Caltrans, talking to Caltrans about how this is really a bad idea and about how they should not continue to expend more money and effort on a project that is going to be so vehemently opposed by so many and could potentially also, if it did go forward, could potentially sour people on the ballot measure itself. And then finally, SCAG, a mention was just made by Mr. Ochoa about the RTP and the LRTP. We'll be working with SCAG as well to try to remove the tunnel from those documents and to make sure that the Beyond the 710 gets more attention. And continued media pressure. We'll continue to reach out to major publications. One thing I didn't mention is that we also met, in addition to getting an editorial out of the SG Tribune, we have met with the LA Times editorial board about Beyond the 710. I've continued to stay in touch. The sense I'm getting from the editorial board writers is that eventually they are going to write about it, and while, of course, they're not going to tip their hands in advance, they've been telling me the indications I'm getting is that they're going to be fairly friendly to us. And one of the things about Beyond the 710 that we emphasize to all the stakeholders that we meet with is that this really is a 21st century solution to a 21st century problem, and that the tunnel is really something that maybe might have been appropriate 50 or 60 years ago, but it's just not the way we do things anymore. That does seem to get a lot of traction. In terms of our outlook for success, certainly where we are today is in a much better place than we were 6 months ago. We've got a great alternative to the tunnel, a lot of traction, and I think that, and I want to thank the City Council for their past support for all the things that have gone into this, whether it's the Nelson Nygaard support or the legal support or the public relations support that you've been funding for me. And at that point, I just want to say thanks again. I certainly encourage you to adopt the motions that are before you, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Ms. Friedman.
First, thanks for coming, and thanks for the great presentation. The ballot measure, is that a ballot measure that we're doing or they're doing? That's the first I've heard of a ballot measure.
Oh, the ballot measure that I'm referring to
Yes.
is what is colloquially known as Measure R2.
Oh, okay, that ballot measure.
okay.
I thought maybe someone was doing a separate
No.
710 ballot measure.
No.
Okay, got it.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Devine.
You mentioned a change in the number of allies. Can you give me a numerical idea of what kind of change? Has like one city changed their mind, or 10 cities, or?
I think it's fair. There were, at the votes that I was referring to, which is the vote by the COG to express the COG's preference for the tunnel alternative, and they were sending comments in on the DEIR. I believe there were 6 or 7 cities that abstained, and then another half dozen to 9 cities that voted against it. And I, to be honest, I haven't been around long enough to know what it was, but I do know that those no and abstention votes are significantly higher than they've been in the past. What the exact number is, I don't know off the top of my head.
How many voted for it? Do you know that?
I want to say 17 or, no, I want to say 19 out of 34, which is, again, a significant reduction from the number that have voted in favor of it in the past.
I have another question. So given the Nelson Nygaard study and the kind of relatively new data about where the traffic's going and showing scientifically that the tunnel is not going to do exactly what they want, do you see any motion from within those heavily impacted cities with their city councils at all Do you see anyone willing to kind of come forward at this point and say, hey, maybe we should give this some serious thought? Scott Ochoa is shaking his head no, so.
Yeah. I mean, Councilwoman, I'll say this. There are, especially in Alhambra and Monterey Park, there are members of their council who have been fighting for this for multiple decades. And when you ask them why they continue to fight for this, they're answered, I've heard two separate answers personally. One is that this was promised to them decades ago, and so they're going to continue to fight for it regardless. A Monterey Park city councilwoman told me that her city had to bite the bullet on the 710 10 or 20 years ago. It's time for the other cities to take their medicine as well. Has absolutely nothing to do whether it's good policy or not. That appears to be this is something that they've staked their political careers on to a certain extent. It's something that they feel very deeply about. But I'm interested in exploring whether there are members in the community and even some members of the City Council who might be willing to listen to us and see if we can open up a new front on the battle.
Mr. Garbett?
Yes, you indicated that there was a vote and seven other members, they abstained from voting. I would like to know what was the vote for? What was on the agenda to be voted on?
There have been a number of votes by the COG over the past number of months. The vote that I'm specifically, there are two votes in particular that I want to focus on. One was, as you know, the draft environmental impact report had a comment deadline, I believe it was August 5th of this year. And your city and the various alliances put in comment letters about the different alternatives and criticizing the tunnel and a variety of things. Other cities put in comments advocating for one alternative or another. And in this case, the COG vote was a vote to put a comment letter in supporting the tunnel alternative. So that was vote number one. A more recent vote that we did the press release about was a virtually unanimous vote by the COG to submit a project list to Metro for the R2 ballot measure that did not include the tunnel.
Okay, let me ask you this direct question. Does Caltrans or Metro, do they have to, who do they have to get a permission to build this tunnel or not? I mean, do they have to go to the government, to the state, to the cities? What is our power as five cities alliance to stop the tunnel? Do they have to even come to us and ask us to? What do you think, or they're just doing this as a courtesy to us?
Well, there's a number of things in play. Legally, Caltrans is now considering some 2,500 comments that were submitted by August 5th, including some highly critical comments that go to the very core of some of the pro-tunnel arguments, which have to do with air quality and attainment under regional air quality plans. But Caltrans, where the EIR is legally now, is Caltrans is processing these 2,500 comments, has to respond to them, and then eventually will, with those comments, do additional analysis if necessary. And in a normal CEQA project, they would then, Caltrans then, as the agency, because they're the lead agency on this, would then certify the EIR and would recommend a particular alternative. Now, among those alternatives we know are the tunnel. There's also, on the other end of the spectrum, a no-build alternative. And then there's a variety of other alternatives that are kind of in between, light rail and traffic mitigation, that sort of thing. But once Caltrans certifies that, then it goes to Metro as to whether or not Metro wants to fund it. And so so that's kind of the legal process. Now, what is the power of the five cities and the power of Glendale in particular? Well, there's a couple of things going on. One is that the Metro Board seems to be very focused on trying to get R2 passed. And so they're very concerned about doing anything that will upset a lot of people that would then vote against it. As you all know, getting a 2/3 vote, which is what's required for a sales tax, is pretty difficult. And so the idea is that we're hearing from a variety of Metro Board members, including Mayor Garcetti, is that they want to tamp down as much opposition as possible, and so there's a lot of fear among the Metro Board members that any funding for this tunnel could generate a lot of opposition. That's something they'd be that they would find very problematic. In terms of our legal ability to stop the tunnel, I mean, certainly the impacts that the tunnel would have on the city of Glendale and the other members of the alliance could potentially be a basis for a lawsuit against the certification of the EIR. In addition, the tunnel would go through the city of Los Angeles, which is on record of being against it, through the city of South Pasadena, and through the city of Pasadena. All of these cities would probably do whatever they can to prevent the tunnel. So there are a variety of legal strategies that could be utilized, and our lawyers tell us that the EIR is a total mess, and that there's many different hooks that you could use to defeat it. However, what we're trying to do right now is use political power and the power of public relations to persuade Caltrans and the Metro Board that this is not a good idea. We don't even want to get to litigation. We want to there is so much opposition to this, and that there are better solutions, that the better route would be to kill the tunnel, to do something along the lines or study the Beyond the 710 alternative, and that way you would avoid a lot of problems, and you would also free up literally billions of dollars to do other projects that would benefit our communities. Does that answer your question? More or less?
More or less. And also you said there are great alternatives for the tunnel. What are the other alternatives?
Well, the other alternatives are the ones that are in the Beyond, or from our point of view, that are in the Beyond the 710 plan. And again, instead of doing a tunnel, which again, as I said, most of the people who are causing the current problems are local commuters who are trying to get to local destinations. And the idea would be, but the problem with especially the South 710, is that it's because of the way the stub is configured, everyone is basically dumped into one area, which causes a great deal of congestion. So the idea would be to replace that south stub with a 4-lane highway, certainly go to Valley where the current stub goes, maybe it would go on to Mission, another half a mile beyond that, and then would also perhaps include a new eastern entrance to Cal State LA, which currently, the 710 runs right by it, and there's no way to get to Cal State LA, so a lot of people have to go all the way around. So the idea would be to use that 4-lane highway to redistribute traffic and to really eliminate a lot of the rush hour congestion that's plaguing that area right now. In addition, on top of that, this would open up, because the 4-lane highway would take up a lot less space than the current 710 stub does. It would free up a number of acres of land, perhaps for Cal State LA's use, for a bike path, for light rail, and then adding on to that some ideas for a light rail system that would connect the corridor in a way that would give people additional alternatives. And again, when you look at what the City of LA is doing with their 2035 mobility plan, if you look at what Caltrans is doing in terms of new policy, if you look at what Metro is advocating in terms of transportation policy, the Beyond the 710 proposal is completely is in line with all of those, as opposed to the tunnel, which is really, as I said, pretty out of date in terms of a transportation strategy. So all of those arguments together we feel are going to be compelling.
And the plan is to fund the alternative solutions with Measure R2 money?
Well, in fact, there's about $750 million left over in Measure R funds for the 710 corridor. We believe that Metro could reprogram that money from a tunnel to fund a big chunk of the 710, the Beyond the 710 plan. In addition, there could be money available from the sale of a variety of homes that Caltrans owns in the corridor right now. And between that and maybe some small amount of additional funding from R2, you could pay for all the Beyond the 710. And again, because the price estimates for the tunnel itself would be anywhere from 6 to 12 billion or even more. It would free up that money to do things that would be more valuable for the communities.
And the Five Cities Alliance, are they still in the fight, or some of them just dropped out? Are they still in it, or are they contributing as much as we do, or what is their position?
Well, the cities are all in, certainly all in the fight. All 5 cities are still in the fight. The cities are of different sizes and have different budgets, so no, I certainly they're not all contributing the same amount. But they all are either contributing money or they are contributing their voices. And we have a variety of elected officials from the cities are showing up at a lot of the stakeholder meetings to make the point that they're strongly against the tunnel, and that they'll do whatever they can to stop it.
That's great, but let's go back to numbers. I mean, it's our taxpayers' money that's going towards this, so can we have some certainty as to how much each of them has contributed so far? It sounds like if we approve today's 50,000, we'll be up to 130. I remember during our initial vote, when my fear was that we're going to end up spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, we were told, no, this is about $50,000. It's a limited amount of money, and now we're about to hit 130. So my next question is going to be, is this going to be the end of it? And again, I'm going along with the 5 cities. I just want fairness. I want to make sure that those municipalities that are actually impacted much more than Glendale is, much more. Like you said, some of them will do everything to stop this project from happening. I'm not sure Glendale is in that position because Glendale's big. Like you said, some parts are impacted, which concerns us very much. Some parts aren't. So do we know how much they've each spent?
Councilman, I don't have those numbers in front of me. I think there might be some...
Actually, at this point, based on the best estimates we have, the amounts that are pledged, I think it's exhibit, it's in the back, if you look at the exhibit, 15,000 from LCF, 20 from Pasadena, 30 from Glendale, the whopping 500 from Northeast LA, which is yet to be received, and 30,000 from South Pass.
I'm sorry, but you said 30 Glendale, but you said in your report you said 80 Glendale.
Well, in terms of what we have right now, I can tell you that we put up 30, we put up 50, and that's where we are now. And what you see going forward, I think Sierra Madre is in a position where they probably will lend their moral support and just don't have the capacity. And so going forward, and well, they are, I think they've lost their utility user tax. And so they are reeling at this point just to maintain services.
Our very wealthy northern neighbor, La Cañada Flint,
Surely.
you said 10, 15,000?
There's two different numbers. I mean,
Yeah.
there's the
budget.
50, there's the number that's in the 5 Cities Alliance number, and then there's
The Connected Cities
Communities.
Coalition.
It varies more.
So if you look at the 5 City Alliance, it is much more even. So South Pass is at 55, LCF is at 55, Pasadena is 50, Glendale 50, Sierra Madre 50. And that money is being, I believe it's already been spent.
Okay, so just so that I'm not confused, why are these numbers, I mean, I'm hearing 80 and then I'm hearing 50.
There's an absolute confusing factor to this. If you go back to when we first had the discussion, I mean, we fully believe this ultimately, from beginning to end, absent litigation, could cost us $150,000. You go to litigation, it's probably ×2, maybe more. I mean, that we know that going in, but the council's direction was to break this up into chunks and to come back to you and say, okay, do you still want to play? Think back to the Connected Cities, or the 5 City Alliance, which was focused entirely on study. Wasn't going to be any advocacy whatsoever in order to make it palatable to the greatest number of partners. That money gets eaten up. Now we're eating into the 30,000 that was
Outreach.
Yeah, the other amount that was given to the 5 City Alliance, which is entirely advocacy, and that money is being blown through. And so at this point, I think we've crossed the line of. I don't think the cities yet have said definitively we're done trying to be both sides of the same coin. It's all advocacy at this point, as Mr. King's indicated, it is a political battle at this point. And so I think going forward, you should expect that practically everything we do will be a public relations and legal environmental, but everything is overtly focused on advocacy. And I can tell you, I mean, I want to make sure we're very clear. We have this 50 that we're requesting, just probably another 50 on top of that to get us to a point where a decision is going to be made first by Caltrans on the EIR about whether or not they will certify and what option they'll look at. And then ultimately, Metro has to decide whether or not to fund this.
And meanwhile, all of South Glendale, which is probably like 60% of the city's population, the most dense part of Glendale, has no idea what the 710 is.
Perhaps that
sure.
Well, I mean, to the extent that the council certainly has talked about it, this has been well covered. But I think that the discussion for you is kind of much more holistic to say, okay, what ultimately is Glendale's interest, and what is it that you want to see? Mr. Garpetian had asked the question about, well, can the 5 cities really stop it? I'd submit to you that 2 cities have stopped it for about 35 years. And to the extent that 2 of the largest cities in LA County would join the fight, I think you have a very good chance to stop the 710. And then it becomes, as Mr. King had indicated to you, it becomes a discussion about what type of political pressure would the Glendale City Council play. What is your interest? If you were to work with City of LA, who is the biggest dog in the yard, to ultimately say, well, would you, if you were to pivot and go towards a light rail, which is one of the options that was studied in the EIR, as well as a rapid transit system, bus rapid transit system, if you were to focus there, we would be on support on R2, as opposed to we will do everything from this bully pulpit to try to kill R2. Because that's ultimately the pressure that you all bring to bear, that Pasadena brings to bear, and the other cities as well. And that is what you have to be comfortable with. So truly, we're coming back to you in these incremental chunks. Are you still in the game or are you not?
Let me ask you another.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
How much was the R1? How much was the total R1?
You remember, Ara?
Well,
budget? Was 33 billion?
It was about 30 billion, but that was split up into different categories of operations.
What did they do with that 30 billion? That's what I want to know, because we're still on the same plan trying to expand 32 miles of rail, which is going to cost another 16, 17 billion. I'm not talking about 710. I want to know, they want to come and raise another $50 billion, and most of that, a big chunk of that money goes towards consulting and community outreach and everything else, which we have to do. I'm not saying that, but what did we do with that $30 billion? What did we do with that money? And now here I see Council Member Huizar, is that what his name is?
Huizar.
Yeah, he pledged $500 that we haven't received it yet, and he sends one of his assistants to come to one of our meetings and criticize the City of Glendale for the way we operate landfill unfairly, and spends like $300 on her salary probably for 2-3 hours, but the $500 we haven't still received. And I hope that City of LA's or County of LA's commitment is a lot better and larger than $500 that we haven't received yet. So I wanted to know, okay, we get Measure R2 and we increase our taxes and we
I don't think Glendale's seen any Measure R money.
I don't know, probably on some of the...
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I mean,
It's not on the
the
agenda.
R2's discussion is not part of the agenda. So.
It is. They're just saying they're funding they're going to fund
The merits,
the alternatives.
the spending of R1 money and R2. I wouldn't want the council to go down that road of having that discussion.
The council has requested, we are bringing back to you and I guess in the context of R2, we can give you an overview of R1.
That'd be great.
And be able to use those kind of comparative analyses and lens together. For purposes of tonight, I think that the question being put to you is, do you want to continue to advocate against the 710 freeway?
I think I personally, I do, but I don't want this to be a bottomless pit only for us.
Right, and I do too, and again, I just want some fairness.
If everybody's fighting for the same cause, we have to spend the same amount of money. All these cities that are on that, the route of 710 tunnel, they're going to be impacted a lot heavier than we are. We We want to cooperate with them, we want to work with them, but I think we need to know where we're going to draw the line. Last time that I was just elected, a few months ago, we said $50,000 we're going to put in Rubik's account, and I said not Rubik's account, in the city's account, and every time we want to release some of the money, we're going to vote for it. But that was my understanding. Maybe I was wrong. But is that money still there, or it's all gone?
It's spent.
All spent. So
If you want to stay in the game, it's this 50,000 here.
Yeah. Can I ask, are all the other cities asking at this time for $50,000?
At this point, the four major players that you see there will split. My understanding is that they will split costs evenly in quarters, but what they put forward is what they will put forward. But the bills that come down, we will split those evenly among the four cities. So if you told us you do $20,000, okay, and then we'll be back in front of you in a couple months in January and say, okay, we need another 20,000, or we can ask for 50 or 100 for that matter. If you recall from the last discussion, I think we had talked about a larger number, and the council said, no, let's do this in smaller chunks, and we're here looking for that chunk.
Do we have
if the council still wants to move in that direction.
Do we have a single individual or an ad hoc committee that is sort of the contact with the Five City Alliance?
Mr. Eccleston, Public Works Manager for Rubik, is our key point person there.
So let's say we approve the 50,000 today. Can we apply some pressure, some friendly pressure for them to understand that? I like the way you put it. Glendale cannot be a bottomless pit for funds, and if this does go to litigation, we're looking at $250,000, $500,000 in expenses just from Glendale. I mean, that's a lot of money.
And I guess that all depends on how long this goes on.
That's true.
Exactly. That's what I was going to ask. This advocacy, where do you think this is going to come to a conclusion? Is it next year? Is it 2 years later? And what do you think, hypothetically, how much is it going to cost for all five cities? I mean, it's just.
I don't mean to sound flip, sir, at all, but it's going to cost what it's going to cost as long as you want to stay in that game. Rest assured, as you've heard, both from Mr. Najarian in the past, Mr. King now, the cities that have a very strong vested interest in getting the 710 tunnel completed, it is part of their political DNA. They would not know what to do with themselves if they weren't fighting about the 710. Those cities are going to spend money to advocate for it. And either they advocate for it and overwhelm the noise in the region that can be made by a couple of smaller cities, or you will stay in that game.
And I'll tell you this much. I mean, the Caltrans and Metro, they can outlast anybody and everybody.
Well, it's been 35 years, and we're still talking about this project.
They're still here. So if they want to, because our financial strength is not going to match against what they have. So I don't know, do we want to go in a lawsuit with them? At the end of the day, if they wanted to build it, we have to decide, okay, let's say we spent another $100,000. Every other city spent $100,000. And we are to a point that they came back and said, no, we did the EIR answered the 2,500 questions, and it's all fine. We're certifying it. We want to move forward. Maybe in 10 years or 50 years. But what is our we have to decide, I think, sooner than later, what will be our position at that time? Are we going to file a lawsuit?
You can
and
have,
who is going to pay for that lawsuit?
You can have that discussion.
Can we afford it or not? That's
certainly, and the question to you will be, and maybe you do it on two fronts. You're going to sue Caltrans as the Five City Alliance or as the City of Glendale, and then you're going to begin doing this very same intensive public relations effort on Metro, because ultimately it's a Metro project, although Caltrans is the lead agency. So you just change venues. And I would submit to you that while this project has lived and died several times over the last couple generations, you won't be fighting necessarily every single year. It right now has life. It's moving forward. You are going to try to address it in the EIR stage and hopefully get cooler heads, political heads, to prevail by way of getting LA in particular to back away from the freeway, the tunnel, and towards a light rail option. I mean, our preferred option is light rail. And so we aren't just saying no. We as Glendale are saying we would prefer to see the light rail. That's our preference.
But we never had a discussion about it. I didn't know about that.
That's our comment letter that we gave to Caltrans.
I have some comments, but I'm going to hear from the members of the public first, who've been waiting patiently. Susan Boland, followed by Elizabeth Nelson.
Hello, I'm Susan Boland. I'm president of the Far North Glendale Homeowners Association. I'm also a member of the No 710 Action Committee. To address your comments, Council Member Garpetian, please understand that South Pasadena has been fighting the freeway extension since 1947. So when you're talking about shared fairness of cost, they have had countless lawsuits and countless, I mean, just millions of dollars being put into opposing this project. Later in the game, La Cañada came in and also was part of many lawsuits, and they've put in millions of dollars. So the money that's already been spent to get to this point has not been shared equally. Now you look to modern day with Glendale coming in late in the game, it's only fair because Glendale will be affected by this project greatly. So under the three Cs, each of the not the 5 city alliance, the 3 Cs, each of the cities put in $50,000. I think that's fair. Now you're coming back and looking at the numbers and adjusting. So the numbers that are listed, the 30, the 50, the 6, whatever, there's a difference in discrepancy now, and you should look carefully at those numbers. But up until now, it's South Pasadena and La Cañada who've bore the brunt of most of this. I would encourage everybody to vote yes on both fundings, both the $6,000, we've got to pay our bill that we already have to date, but the additional $50,000 is critically important. Glendale will be greatly affected by if the 710 freeway tunnel is built, not only along the 210 corridor, but also by increased traffic on the 134, the 2, and the 5, and throughout downtown. The tunnel is projected to carry 180,000 additional vehicles per day, many of them trucks carrying freight. And although the draft EIR comment period has closed, it is critical that Glendale continue to be part of the 5 City Alliance and the 3 Cs Coalition to advocate for responsible community preferred alternatives such as those proposed by the Beyond the 710 group. By keeping clean energy proposals in the forefront of the discussion, we might have a chance at this time to kill this project. The tunnel is outdated, it's expensive, and it should be removed from consideration by Caltrans, Metro Board, and the California Transportation Commission. Now is the time. Now is the time to apply the pressure that we need to do this. And as stated before, any money that's not put towards it could go through better transportation projects. I strongly urge the council to continue to approve funding for the 710 advocacy. It's really important for Glendale.
Thank you. Elizabeth Nelson, followed by Sherry Stubbs.
Hi. I'm Elizabeth Nelson, and I want to say the B710 project removes my concern that nobody in the 710 group could address, and they admitted that. They admitted in their documents, nothing in their document for the 710 tunnel addressed the fact that in case of emergency, there was nothing in the plan to serve the ADA citizens of our community, nor to help the elderly and their support animals escape the tunnel. They would be trapped. So please vote yes for more advocacy. Thank you.
Sherry Stubbs.
Sherry Stubbs, Far North Glendale. I would reiterate what Susan said. South Pasadena, La Cañada, Flint Ridge, innumerable amounts of money spent. There's no way you could count it. So coming in now, we could never match it. Last night, Tad Dombrowski, Glendale Parking Director, and Tim Foy spoke to our Glendale Homeowners Coordinating Council members on the parking problems in Glendale, i.e. preferential parking. The upshot? There is no solution. The problem just shifts from one street to another. The 710 tunnel proposal is just the same. It solves nothing, but just shifts the problem to other routes and would specifically negatively impact Glendale, streets and throughways. We who live in far north Glendale, I know we're not in the 60% south of the 134, but we would be particularly hard hit with the added vehicles, trucks, and accompanying noise, pollution, et cetera, with everything they bring. We cannot drop the ball at this point. The tunnel must be stopped, and I urge that you vote to approve the specified funding and participation in the ongoing 710 freeway advocacy activities. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Weissman.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City staff, and the public. My name is Bill Weissman from far north Glendale. And I kind of want to start off with the 10,000-foot view of this particular subject, which is that here in Southern California, we basically have a transportation system that is unsustainable. And it's unsustainable because we have too many drivers who are driving solo in vehicles with internal combustion engines that are adding to the air pollution and greenhouse gases, and that will eventually contribute to making this planet uninhabitable for our great-grandchildren. That's really my motivation overall for being involved in this particular fight. We've made great strides in Southern California in terms of our transportation infrastructure lately. I never thought I would see some of the things in my lifetime. I have very vague memories of, as a 5-year-old back in the late 50s of riding on the red cars when they were still around. And Los Angeles used to have the world's largest fixed rail interurban transportation system that's gone now. But it's really heartening. In my lifetime, I've seen now the Gold Line expansion out to Azusa, the Expo Line expansion to Santa Monica. Even though the Green Line never made it into LAX, hopefully someday we'll have a people mover that will enable us to improve situations there. But we have to look at transportation models that get people out of their cars and into transit, and that involve people living near transit, and that involve people working in jobs that don't require them to transport themselves many miles away in order to be able to earn a living. And I would agree with what Susan Boland said, that now is not the time to take the pressure off. We've had some very significant responses to the draft EIR from the Environmental Protection Agency, from the Southern California Air Quality Management District. And those responses have reinforced what we've been saying all along. It's counterintuitive to think that if you're going to put in a tunnel that's going to bring a huge increase in traffic, that somehow that is going to decrease the air pollution and the greenhouse gases. I agree that you have a duty to make sure that this does not become a bottomless pit, and I understand that. At the same time, I would urge you that Glendale needs to continue to participate, and that this is a particularly crucial time to have our voice be heard and to keep the pressure on those people that want to build this tunnel. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards. I just have a few comments, and I would urge my colleagues to support continued participation in this. I do appreciate the concerns for a seemingly bottomless pit, but I can assure you this is not going to be a bottomless pit. The other side perhaps is a bottomless pit. They've hired one of the slickest, meanest PR firms out there, the Englander firm, that's really leaving a scorched earth campaign, and they've tried every dirty trick that they can. But what you are witnessing is perhaps the biggest political comeback in any issue that has ever been before any region or series of municipalities. Let's go back 3 years ago. This 710 tunnel was pretty much a done deal. When I would speak at the Metro Board, calling it into question, asking for a cost estimate, I was snickered at, I was laughed at, I was derided. They made jokes about my ethnicity. They made jokes about Glendale. You know, who are you stupid people from Glendale? Don't you know any better? Don't question this tunnel it's going through. We've got the engineering industrial complex behind us. But what we've been able to do in the past year is something short of, I don't want to, whether it's Ali coming back, whether it's the Mets from '69 coming back and winning the World Series. This is amazing because what happened is we energized the community, not just North Glendale, but people throughout Glendale, people that care about the health of their children. And we showed up at each and every one of the outreach meetings, and we asked the tough questions. And we derided the MTA staffers who couldn't give us answers about how much this tunnel would cost, about the air pollution, about the trucks. And we fought and we fought and we fought. And we even went into the belly of the beast. We went into the San Gabriel Valley, where it was a foregone conclusion that this tunnel was going to go through, due largely to the cocktail advocacy of Barbara Messina and others from her region. And when I say cocktail advocacy, I mean just that. At these conventions, at the ICA conferences, at the connected contract city meetings and seminars, they would push, 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 and everyone would agree to it. But we went and we got the endorsement of the San Gabriel Valley Tribune for this. We're on the verge of getting the Los Angeles Times supporting the Beyond the 710. The tunnel is outdated. It's a dinosaur. It's never going to work. We're fighting against it for the lives of children. The AQMD has told us that the cancer risk of that tunnel is 15 times what is acceptable. This, in contrast to the SCAG director, Hassan Ikrada, before the EIR came out, saying the time for studying this tunnel is over. Let's just build it. What an irresponsible comment that is from someone who leads the region's planning, multi-jurisdictional planning agency. The Environmental Protection Agency said, wait a minute, this EIR that you guys are trying to shove down everyone's throat is flawed. You can't go forward with it. The Sierra Club is circling. The National Historic Trust Agency is on our side. There are people all throughout the Bicycle Coalition. It is a project that is going to die. And I can't reveal too much, but I can assure everyone that we are going for the knockout punch, and that's why I'm not going to be here November 17th. We're going to Sacramento to meet with the very highest level of California government. You can think what that means. And we're going to, at that point, try and kill this tunnel once and for all. So I hope we don't have to spend any more than the $6,000 bill that we owe on this. I mean, we are going for the jugular. We see defeat. Everyone who looks at this with an objective viewpoint sees that the tunnel is not sustainable. What is sustainable is the plan that we put forward with the help of Nelson Nygaard, the firm that we just hired this afternoon to continue with our downtown mobility report card. It's a well thought out plan. It's a sustainable plan. It gives travelers and commuters multiple options. It protects the air, protects the environment, and it's going to cost hardly anything extra once we can divert that money for this tunnel off the books. And we've already spent close to $100 million studying this tunnel through the EIR process, through the public outreach process, through studying the P3 financing options, this really is the right thing. It doesn't affect every single resident of Glendale, but I have always seen Glendale as a leader, as a regional leader, and this is what part of our leadership involves. Standing up for what's right, fighting for what's right, spending some money, yes, but I think it's money well spent, and I would be proud to have this council approve this and celebrate the demise of this tunnel and the resurrection of smart transportation options for the entire region. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. As I said, I do share your concerns. These are very well, they are legitimate and appropriate and responsible concerns of anyone sitting on a governing body. Where will the money end? We just can't keep pouring it down. And it's a little bit scary to take this next step, to put an extra chip on the pile, but I think we really need to do it. And I'll find you guys money. I mean, if you guys are worried about the 50,000, 100,000, I promise I will bring more money to Glendale. Give me a project and I'll fight for it, and we'll get that money, whether it's new buses, whether it's something else we can get. I promise you I'll get
Light
that
rail
money.
going through downtown Glendale.
A light rail?
Light rail going through downtown Glendale.
Overhead.
Let's do that. Speed rail to have a stop.
Nah, we don't.
No, but
Just slow down.
But
You know, I think, Mr. Mayor, we share your concerns as well. But as I said, I don't want this thing to be a bottomless pit. I think that the problem that I have, we're not being briefed on any of these issues, and the AQMD, the EPA, San Gabriel Tribune, all of these companies, Bicycle Coalition, LA Bicycle Coalition, they're not putting a penny into this thing, are they? They're not contributing to this fight. Yeah, we can support it to bring moral supports. But what I'm saying is, I don't have an issue granting the 50,000. But I want to know what is our plan from here on. Are we going to have a plan as to how long is it going to take? If it goes to court, how are we going to fight it? And also be briefed on the plan to move forward. What is the alternatives that the gentleman was indicating? I don't even know about it. We're not being briefed on this. And the letter was sent out. I didn't even know about it. So I'll tell you, I got to tell you, if we are fighting for this thing, we have to be informed, we have to be briefed, and it has to come to council so the community will know. Not only the far north homeowners association. There are 5 people fighting for this thing all by themselves. We maybe can get the rest of the community engaged as well. So I think just for us, it's like looking at. I understand you're going to Sacramento. Hopefully, you can have the knockout punch, but wear your lightweight gloves, because the ones that have a lot of padding, they don't have too much of a punch. So, like they use in UFC fighting. But that was a joke.
I'm going to bring Ronda Rousey with me.
Bring Ronda Rousey with you. That everybody will support what you have. But I think what personally I want to know is, where do we stand today? The EIRs, there's 2,500 questions or issues that was brought up. I personally didn't know about it. So that's my 2 cents. I cannot go to every meeting, because that's why we have you there. You can brief us on this, but we need to be informed. That's all. I mean, it's just all of a sudden I see another 50,000. We don't know where we're going and what's going to happen after that. So that's my position on that.
Ms. Friedman?
Having to file lawsuits and team up with these cities on lawsuits is going to be so incredibly expensive. It's going to be very, very difficult at that point to stop this. So in my mind, any money that we spend now is an investment against those future investments. And it's certainly something that we need to do for the sake of our city. I say no in the tunnel, and I want to move C1 and 2.
Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to support both items, C1 and 2. And I'm going to support them because I want our residents, whether they're part of North Glendale or South Glendale, to be well represented by us and their interests to be protected, and them always knowing that their interests are protected by their council. But as these costs escalate, as you know, the next tranche, God forbid, comes in front of us, obviously every time it's going to be more and more difficult to support the spending of money. I mean, and I appreciate your comments that right now is the time, because we're in advocacy mode. Once we go into litigation mode, litigation literally is a bottomless pit. I mean, you can do a couple of discovery requests and that's it. There goes your $50,000 like this. So we don't want to get to that point. Hopefully we knock it out. Hopefully you have a successful trip to Sacramento, and I will support it. But we need to knock this out with the least amount of expense possible.
Second?
Wait.
Sure. Second.
I just want to make a comment too, that I had questions about the fairness of the expenditures and the money that we're giving as opposed to all the other cities. But I'm convinced now, after the mayor and the speakers that were here tonight, thank you all for coming and clarifying a lot of questions for me as well, that I will approve this agenda item as well. I agree we have to fight it. I think right now is, sounds like to me it's the last stand, hopefully. Hopefully it's the last stand. And as Mr. Ochoa says, we don't know what's coming in the future. We just have to take it as it comes. And right now, let's just go for that final knockout. So I will be moving to, or voting to approve this
Mayor,
as well.
Don't forget the light rail through Grant Boulevard. We're
There you
serious.
go.
I mean,
Downtown.
we need to get some of the measure R1 and R2 money for. I know I can't talk about it, but it's
Well,
on
let's put
unfair
that on
plug.
another-
But you know,
Let's
it's.
put that on an agenda where we can.
No, I was serious when I said it.
No, I know.
Yeah,
so
of
am
course.
I. And,
Yeah.
you know, we when we discuss these issues, please don't take it in the wrong way that we don't want to support the you know, being against the 710. We are all against it, but we have a responsibility to our taxpayers as well, and we want to make sure that every penny we spend is done right, and that's our job. So with that, there's a second.
Seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Garpetian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Thank you, colleagues. And thank you, Mr. King, for your time. Was this on the clock? Were we eating into that?
Is this that $50,000? I hope it doesn't go all in this meeting.
Okay, next item, please.
Time is oral communication. Discussion is limited. Time is not part of this agenda. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there'll be no debate or decision. City manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Thank you. Susan Boland, followed by Elizabeth Nelson.
Hi, Susan Boland again, this time for Crescenta Valley Community Association. I'll make it brief, I know it's late. And thank you so much for your vote tonight, I really appreciate it. I'd like to talk about Rock Haven. I wanted to remind the council that in 2008, when Rock Haven property was purchased to save it from certain demolition, promises were made, and the community has not forgotten those promises. I ask that while you are considering what is best for Rock Haven, please keep in mind that the community would like to be actively engaged in the process and not be told what has been decided after the fact. And in talking to hundreds of people about their vision for the space, not a single person has suggested selling it or building more housing. They always talk about rehabilitating the cottages and creating community space. You have the opportunity to do something good here. Let us help you. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Nelson.
Hello again. I'm, in case you were curious, North Glendale. I'm Friends of Rock Haven, but representing myself. Thank you for voting yes, by the way, on the 710. In Glendale Parks and Rec's recent 3 community outreach meetings for community input on uses for the funding in the budget for parks development, the discussion included Rockhaven as a regional park and its potential uses for senior groups, nonprofit groups, youth groups, and for their activities and meetings, like we would do for a Boys and Girls Club, for Scouts Clubs, things like that. We would like to see Glendale keep their plans and implied promises from those meetings and earlier meetings, and maintain and develop Rockhaven with the existing structures and the existing land for the uses as discussed in those meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Herbert Milano? Going once. Herbert Milano, going twice.
The stop is still.
Oh.
In memory of Paul Roberts, we are going to adjourn tonight's meeting. Herbert Milano, for the 3rd time, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'm sorry, Mr. Milano.
Oh, here he is.
Mayor, if you would like to reopen the meeting, you need to reconsider. There
We'll
needs
have
be a
to,
motion
how do
and a
we, how do we deal with this?
Just need to make a motion in a second and
Move
Second.
for reconsideration, the adjournment?
Move to reopen it.
Okay, is there a motion? Reopen, second. Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Sinanian. Yes. Mayor Najarian.
No. The ayes have
Mr. Milano, you may
it. We were at oral communications when we adjourned. Herbert Milano.
Thank you very much, Mayor Najarian. The issue I want to bring up to you is a non-controversial issue, or at least I hope it is non-controversial. I would like to invite some of the council members to walk with me on some of the streets here in Glendale, primarily what we call the gateway area of Glendale. This is an area between Brand Boulevard and Glendale Avenue, and between Broadway and the freeway. I bought property in Glendale nearly 30 years ago. Many of the streets near my building have not been repaired in all that time. None, 30 years. Some, I think, 50 years. There is a convention concerning the cost of repair, that when a street gets to have 80% of its use is at 80% or below, the cost of repair quadruples. And this you can verify with Public Works. It's a standard number. The city of Glendale has 350 miles of roads. There's a report on the CAFR called the Operational Indicators. It gives you a year-to-year assessment of the repairs being done to the roads in Glendale. There are 2 kinds of repairs. There's the surface type repair where you put slurry seal. It's sort of like a maintenance work. They just put some slurry seal over it. And the other is reconstruction. So when these roads get to be at 80% or below, it needs reconstruction. You cut off about the top 2.5, 3 inches, and you basically resurface it. Something very similar to what was done with La Cañada, which I'm very pleased to see that have done with federal money. But what I see as a trend is that when it comes to using our own city funds for our own streets, we don't seem to be putting the money into road repair. So I'm looking at numbers here between 2014 and below, and it's less than a mile. So if the average road has about a 20 years lifespan, you need to repair about 17 miles per year. And the city has been repairing a mile or less. So you have an accumulation, and the accumulation is visible. If you drive on Louise near California, the roads feel like you're riding an old carpet. It's like you're in a ship. The roads on Duran are horrific. The alleys, I mean, every time there's a rain, it's a significant state of disrepair. It's just that disrepair is visible, is palpable, the potholes are continual. The city has made an effort, especially recently in the last couple of years, to take areas where there are multiple potholes and repaired those sections like 15 feet at a time or 20 feet at a time. But it's not sufficient. It does not fix the level of disrepair that has accumulated for the last 50 years. So this is not just a problem of, should we say, inattention of this city council, it's previous city councils as well. But this is something that I can show you. You can actually see it on a daily basis. When the rains come, the situation gets really worse. Puddles, I mean, it really looks like a third world country. And my focus today is to just give you an invitation to come and see for yourselves the conditions of the roads and why it is that we need to look at our budget again, review it, and see what you can do to assign the adequate amounts of money necessary to public works to address the issue of the road disrepair that is so significant. I have paid attention to the roads that have been fixed in the last few years. And I'm very glad because for a long time I was after getting La Cañada fixed. It was horrific. It looked like varicose veins as you drive down the street, and finally we got it repaired. But I know that a lot of that money came from federal funds. I would like for you, this council, to review its budget, verify that what I'm saying is correct. Every 4 years, the city pays for a significant study where all the roads are evaluated. The study is put in a blue binder, it is maintained in the engineering office, and it's done every 4 or 5 years. The binder is done, the papers are there. I go over there and oftentimes put sticky notes, yellow notes all over the place. Nobody sees it. Nobody's reviewing it. Those sticky notes are still probably in there. My point is that the budget is not addressing the infrastructure needs of the city. This is not an exaggeration. It's something that you can see for yourselves with me, and I can walk you through all those streets or ride those streets if you like. So it is my hope that the city can take this recommendation and this awareness and finally do something about fixing the infrastructure that is so in dire need of repair. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Najarian, for allowing me to come back and speak before you.
Thank my colleagues, Mr.
He didn't.
Milano.
He didn't.
Thank my colleagues.
But he held the gavel up in the air for a while. You know,
We whacked it. You didn't see
Thank my
it.
colleagues.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn unless someone wants to.
Is there a second?
Second.
We've already adjourned for Paul Roberts. Then we are adjourned.